Hello.
All right. So I'm excited to moderate this conversation today. So I'm Kat. I'm one of the partners at YC. I'm here with Justin Kahn, the CEO and founder of Atrium, and Mathilde Collin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Front. And I'm excited because we are going to talk about founder wellness. And as you heard, both of these people have built incredible companies. There are a million topics that they could have talked about today. But I wanted to know, why did you think this topic was something that was important to cover today and for founders to think about?
Well, I think for me, my startup journey is, I had it a couple times, and the first times were really horrible.
5 times.
Yeah, all of the time. All 5 were horrible in their own ways, as I'm sure many people in the audience can resonate with. But the last time was was also really tough, this time with Atrium, and that started getting me to think about how I could make things change for myself, and I started really diving in and digging into different ways that I could improve my own wellness, and I found that made a huge difference in how I show up every day, and so I wanted to share that with
Was there a specific moment in your life or in one of your company's lives where you realized this was something you really wanted to focus on, founder health, founder wellness?
Yeah, I think for me it was, I was a couple of years, maybe a year and a half ago, I was super stressed out. Again, with Atrium, there was, in the start, there's always a roller coaster. No matter what's happening, where you are, how much money you've raised, how big your company is, there's always ups and downs. And I was kind of in the middle of one of those down periods of time, and I was like, things have got to change. So I started off just with really basic, trying really basic things, like let me try Headspace and seeing if I can, de-stress myself during the day and things like that. Yeah.
Mathilde, what about you?
Well, so it's funny because I feel like if someone gets into this topic of mental health, then all they want to talk about is this, because they understand that it's the most important thing for every human being, and I think that's what we have in common. I think in terms of why I started talking about it and caring about it is because literally I had no choice. So 3 years ago, Front was maybe, 30 people, and one day my co-founder tells me, can we go on a walk? Can we go on a walk? And he tells me, well, I have bad news. I have cancer. And it was pretty bad. And what went after that was me trying to do 2 things at once. I was in San Francisco going to the hospital every day and have him go through chemo after chemo after chemo, telling him everything is great and telling him Front is amazing so that he could have happiness from something. And then going back to the office and telling the team, Laurent is great, everything is fine, and just completely forgetting about myself. And after a few months of doing this, I became super mentally unhealthy, very anxious, and I woke up and I couldn't go to work and I didn't enjoy any of the things I was doing in life, which was, okay, well, at that point, I have no choice but to prioritize my mental health. And then I tried a lot of different things that I can talk about, but the end state, maybe 6 months after it all got started, I was actually way happier than I was before he was diagnosed with cancer. And so I started understanding more about myself and about human beings and how there is so much that they can do to be happier, but they will never prioritize it because 1, it takes time and discipline, and 2, there are always more urgent things to do.
And so talk a little bit about the process and what are the things that have worked really well for you that people in the audience can take away with them today?
So first, I think a misconception is there is this one thing that you all do and all of a sudden you all feel differently. So it was first a lot of different things that I tried. So I can give you a list. 1, I started meditating every morning. So I wake up, I have a shower, and then I meditate for 12 minutes on Headspace. Then I started having a better relationship with my phone. So don't have any notification, deleted all my apps from work. So it means that when I wake up, the first thing I do is not checking my emails, and the first thing I do the last thing I do before going to bed is not checking my emails either. During the weekend, when I don't have my computer, I'm not working, which is super healthy. I started eating differently. I started having a coach. I did hypnosis. I exercised more. So it's a lot of things, and I think I can't say, well, this one thing led to me being such a happier human being, but the fact that I would do them every day or every week, and I would keep doing them is what led to this happier
So
state.
it's just having a practice and doing it week over week and just continuing a path?
Yeah, I think building up a regular routine of things that are healthy habits is really important. I always found myself, I thought of myself as someone who was not very disciplined and like not able to do things consistently over time. And so, I started doing a lot of the same things that Mathilde did maybe a year and a half ago. And I found that it was possible to just like kind of build like a habit stack of things that I do every morning, like a routine that just like made me feel good every morning, right? So it's kind of like every morning I'd write a gratitude journal, work out, meditate, and just religiously have done it, for the last probably 400 days, right? And I started off with very like low threshold, things to do. Like I was just meditating for like 10 minutes, or like my bar for working out was 5 minutes. If I could just work out for 5 minutes, there's no excuse, right? Like you always have 5 minutes in the morning, and just do whatever 50 push-ups or something like that. And then from there it kind of built up, and now I can, my morning routine is a couple hours. I'll spend like an hour meditating, an hour working out, but I didn't have the discipline at first. It was just building something that was like habitual.
And I think one thing to know is the thing that works for Justin is not the thing that worked for me, is not the thing that worked for you, and you always have to. So Justin came to our company and he was talking about this gratitude journal. I thought, so cool, I'm going to try it. And then I felt at it. It was never, like I received a notification, it was never the right time. And so but I thought, well, being grateful is probably something that helps human beings be happy. So then I bought a sticker on Etsy, it's called Grateful, and I put it in my shower. The reality is when you shower, you don't have a lot of things to do. And so if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, now I need to think about 3 things I'm grateful for, and like most likely I'll have a shower every day. Well, now I feel like I'm way happier because I'm way more grateful. And so you always need to adapt to also your lifestyle. Maybe morning doesn't work for you, like whatever it is. But just trying to do what has worked for other people, like it probably is going to be a failure, but just the habit is the thing that matters.
Do you have any tips for, I think it's so hard to prioritize this when you have startups, when you have a really busy life, when you have kids. How do you make sure that you spend the time doing it?
Well, I think you have to, I guess, at a meta-conceptual level, really understand that if you do these things, you'll be more effective, right? A lot of people are like, I don't have enough time because I have to work this hour or whatever, or I need to spend this time with my family. And it's easy to feel that way. I think you have to kind of take a step back and have some faith that if you invest in yourself, it's going to pay dividends at the back end. And usually people come to that when they're at the breaking point of stress and they're like at their kind of lowest points. But I don't know what the magic bullet is to change that for all of you, but hopefully you can try it and see.
Yeah, and I think so. The thing for me that I found is, I always find it sad that you need to have a very unhappy, stressful, or hard moment in your life to prioritize it, because every single person that goes through this will say, well, afterwards, I was way happier. And so I always wonder, like, how could you help everyone here prioritize this, because I'm 100% sure that it would be better for all of you. But I think, so the thing I have found for me, because what happened is, okay, I have this super hard moment in my life 3 years ago, then I do all these things, and it is very easy to, kind of stop doing them because you feel like you're great and blah. So that's where discipline and forcing functions matter. So, at the beginning, I didn't have notifications on my phone, was great. But then I was still opening my apps because I didn't have enough discipline. So then I deleted my apps. So now, like, I have no choice. Like, I have to open my computer. And I think if you know that you have a tendency to do something or not do something, then just be aware of it and act on it. Because that's, and maybe other things, like making sure that you do something with your friends so that they hold you accountable. But you have to assume that no matter what, it's going to be hard. Even if at a meta level you're convinced that this is the right thing to do, there will always be something. And I think you mentioned that to me, that your accidents led to you maybe being a little bit less disciplined, but then...
Oh, yeah. I think that I totally agree with you. It's basically all about creating a way where you, like a system where you don't have to use willpower all the time, right? Yeah. So it's easy to have something happen. Like on this accident, I broke both elbows a couple months ago in a bike accident, and for the next couple days after that, I was like wallowing in my own sorrow, and I didn't work out, and I wasn't meditating, and I wasn't working out. I didn't have any arms, so that was tough. But then I was like, okay, well, that's just an excuse. I need to get off my ass and like go and do something. So I was kind of just went back to 5 minutes. I wasn't able to do anything, kind of anything extended. So I just going back to like that 5 minutes and getting back on that habit really helped. And I found like a lot of those like simple hacks have really helped me, like streak tracking. Just trying to have like an extended unbroken streak, or having commitments, social commitments with other people. So I have a group I check in with on fitness and meditation every day, and everybody checks in every day on this WhatsApp group, and stuff like that really helps me.
So having like an accountability team.
Yeah, accountability team.
Yeah. What I love about both of you is that you have thought about this a lot for yourselves, but you also think a lot about it for your company and the people that work with you. And so, Mathilde, for example, Front is consistently one of the top companies to work for on those lists. And you've talked a lot about how to help people work happy and find meaning in their work. And so, how have you taken some of the practices from your own life and made it easier for people that work at Front to find meaning and to find happiness?
Yeah, well, so I think there are two different things, because there is, on one end, what you can do as a leader of a company so that people find meaning in their work, and I will talk about this. But then there is also what you can do as a leader so that they also prioritize their own happiness, and they spend time with their family and they focus on their health. And to me, these are two distinct things that we are deliberate about and that we try to work on. So on making sure that your employees prioritize their mental health, every time a new Front employee joins, there is a company presentation called All About Front, and I tell them all about Front, and I tell them about how my co-founder's story was both horrible but also such a great thing that happened to me. And I will tell them that, like in the context of Front, we'll talk a lot about work and how I think they can be happy and contribute and have an impact. But at the end of the day, the thing that I want them to do first is focus on their own happiness. And then Front will help them by, for example, we give health benefits, and we give more benefits if you check your phone less, or like we have meditation at Front, or like there are many things that.
Oh, how do you get people to stop checking their phone or check their phone less?
So we have this thing at Front where if you check your phone less than 2 hours a day, and so at the end of the month, on your iPhone or whatever, you can just send a screenshot, then you get $200 that you have to spend on health things, not on a new phone.
It's like a massage. That's
it's like
nice.
a massage.
Yeah.
90-minute massage.
Exactly. Well, so we do this, and we do a lot of these things where, as a company, we try to have our employees focus on their mental health. So we have a head of HR who is great, and she came to our one-on-one a few weeks ago, and she told me, I have this new idea so we were building an email company. She's like, once every year for a week, every employee should disconnect completely from work, and we have the ability to log people out of their email. So it's not done yet, but just like we constantly come up with new ideas so that people can both be happy at work and happy outside of work. And then there is a completely different topic, which is, as an organization, what do you do to have people happy to come to work every day? And obviously, it's also not something where I will tell you one thing and then you'll do it and it will happen. But I think it's a combination of many things. Like, people are happy because they have an impact, and the more you can show what their impact is, and transparency is one of the ways that you can implement this, the better. They want to feel like they're belonging. So the more you talk about what your mission is, we just share it every all hands. If they don't tell you that they've heard it enough, it's because you've not said it enough. And that way they know why they're working on what they're working on. And then just making sure that your team feels this sense of belonging. We do company offsites where we work outside of the office every year, and we're almost 200 now, and we still do it. Like in 3 weeks, we're going to Phoenix. And I think there is just a list of things that, as a company, you can do so that people feel like they belong and have this impact, and being very deliberate about implementing them and changing as your company grows is something that I've become super passionate about. But that's why I started Front. So.
And Justin, when in the interview that I saw with you and Mathilde, you guys talked about Zone of Genius and how you found it as a founder, and you try to help the people you work with find their zone of genius. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, and then how how one should find it?
Sure. So I was introduced to this concept from my coach, Matt Moshari, who I think is coaching you now also.
Yeah.
So Matt's great, and he had this concept called the Zone of Genius. And the idea is, like, most people who are competent leaders end up in their zone of competence, which is the things that they're good at, but they don't get energy from. Mm-hmm. And the zone of genius is the things you're good at that give you energy.
What was an example of something that you were good at but didn't give you energy that you
Sure. So like I might be good at the operational meetings, like monthly business reviews, but they don't give me energy. And so, in the meeting, I might be distracted on my phone. People can tell I'm like good at asking the right questions, but like I'm not like really getting energy from that. At the end of the day, I'm like drained, or I dread it in the morning, and it's something that makes me slowly like hate my job. And that's why like I think most founders actually end up, successful founders too, end up in this like zone of competence where they end up kind of doing something well. Their company's being successful, but they're like, I hate my job. And I have so many friends of companies that you would probably imagine was, they'd have their experience would be otherwise, that have that experience. And so the process to like, you want to stay in your zone of genius. How do you get there? He recommends like doing an energy audit where you basically write down or print out your calendar of all the things that you do every day, or like, your previous last 3 weeks of calendar, and just circle everything that gave you energy in blue and circle everything that took away energy in red. And then ruthlessly figure out how to have someone else do the things that are in red. Because the thing is like, what gives you energy might, or takes energy away from you, might actually be something that someone else likes to do and gets energy. We're all different. So someone else might get energy from that. And so it's really about finding, for me and for my exec team, what are the things that give me energy, what takes them away, and then how do I like get someone else who gets energy from those things to do those, and then helping my exec team get there as well.
Is there like a session where you all sit down and discuss this stuff? Like about, let's be honest about the stuff that gives us energy and the stuff that doesn't, or is it?
I think it's something you can do in one-on-ones, pretty regularly, once every quarter or 6 months, something like that. And usually, once people have done it once or twice, they get the hang of it and they can kind of self-audit.
Yeah, I've done the same thing, and so I think you can do two things. Like first, you write what gives you energy and what gives you either not a lot of energy or like is neutral, and then you can either get rid of all the things that don't give you energy or turn them into something that gives you energy. So an example of this would be, I talked about this presentation I do to every new hire all about front, and I was bored. I was like, I've done this presentation 50 times, and so that doesn't give me energy. But what my coach helped me do is just turn it into something that will give me energy. So for example, if I'm very vulnerable and I'm speaking with my whole heart, then probably it will be a good session for me and for them. And so by constantly thinking about how I can be more vulnerable in front of my team, then I turned something that was boring and repetitive into something that was helping me find energy. But one thing I would add on this topic, which is I strongly believe that what makes people happy is finding their zone of genius and doing the thing that they're uniquely good at versus like and that they like doing versus just doing something that you're excellent at. And I think when you lead companies, you have a unique opportunity to change your interview process so that you focus on making sure that you understand when you're interviewing someone what their zone of genius is. And that's something that we've really changed at Front. And at the end of the day, when I reflect back on why Front is a great place to work, people seem happy or we have low regretted attrition, it's because as early as the interview process, what I'm doing if I'm interviewing you is I'm not trying to tell you, well, Front is the best place in the world, and you're not trying to convince me, well, I'm the best person in the world, so it's like obvious fit. But instead, I'm going to tell you, well, this is what we need, and these are the challenges and opportunities of France. Like, tell me, like, if you could design a dream job, like, what it would be, what would you do, what you wouldn't do, what you're good at, not good at. And if we have this super honest conversation, then you build trust that if I'm offering the job to you, it's because I believe that you could be very happy versus I believe that you can do the job well. And I think doing the job well is not enough for this relationship to work super well.
And you find that people are really honest with you in those conversations?
Yes, I think it's all about building trust and making sure that, but at the end of the day, no one can convince me that they're good at everything. So it's like, no matter what, you don't have a choice. Like, you have to tell, and you'd rather tell me what you're actually not good at versus inventing something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think what I found is it's important to train your team on how to have these conversations. But once you do that, yes, I think people are honest because like we're in the same team. Like if the person joins and a year after they quit, like it's not great for them. And I just feel like the bar that everyone should have in their own happiness at work should be so high and as high as possible. And if it's not there yet, then you can just tell them, well, you're going to spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, so many weeks a year at work. So please think about how you could be most happy, and please do that because there is necessarily something you're uniquely good at.
I heard that you, in terms of training your team and giving, like empowering everybody on your team to kind of move forward in the same way, I heard, do you train your exec team as coaches, or what is how does that work?
They're not trained as coaches, although a lot of them have gone to this conscious leadership workshop for coaches. We do this thing that's like called.
And what's conscious leadership?
This is a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership by Diana Chapman and a couple other co-authors, and it's just kind of outlines like it's almost like a amalgam of all of the the how do I explain it? The conscious things to do and to make it basically describes a company where people can bring their whole selves to work, like their whole emotional selves. They take 100% responsibility for what's going on around them, and they're open and curious. And it's kind of like, here are the principles for how you should operate if you want to have this kind of company.
And what are like the 3 main principles, if it's possible to?
It's kind of those ones, which is like, people take 100% responsibility for what's going on around them. So instead of being like, this thing is happening to me, it's like, how did I create this situation? And that gives you agency to like be able to change it for the future. The second is really about being open and curious, and so like, what can I learn from this situation that I'm in? And then the third thing is about bringing your whole emotional self to work. So being able to, if you're angry or frustrated or you're sad at work, you can acknowledge that. Most of the time we shove that down. We like press it down, we try to ignore that. Instead, it's about acknowledging it, but instead of being triggered and like being angry, it's about saying, oh, I notice I'm angry, and then what do I want to do to change that in the future? How can I like get out of this situation?
So do you make it okay to have those conversations at work?
And so a lot of my team is kind of like in this conscious leadership. They've been trained, and they're kind of like bringing it to the company.
That's also well, this book is amazing. I would highly recommend it. But there is
Say the title again, just so we can all write it
15
down.
Commitments of Conscious Leadership. But there is this one thing that is explained in the book where you just have a very small set of human emotions. And so sometimes I will do one-on-ones with my team, and the person will. So let's say I give constructive feedback, and it's hard to. So I can give you an example. I had a one-on-one with someone, gave constructive feedback, and I could feel like she wasn't happy about it, but wouldn't tell me why. And so it's this very awkward situation where I've shared feedback and I've made her unhappy, upset, sad, I don't know. But and then we go work, and I'm unhappy because I didn't manage to have a peaceful conversation. So I told her, okay, in 2 hours we're going to meet again, and what you're going to tell me is, can you put names on your emotions? Like, you might be feeling anger, you might be feeling sadness, fear, joy, whatever. Not joy probably, but and so then that leads to the best conversations, because she was telling me, well, I feel fear. Like, by you sharing the feedback, I fear that you might fire me. And then you have the best conversation, because what you don't want is people not putting names on their feelings and then just having an attitude that makes you think something is wrong. But so I think this is a very simple trick where every time you're in a situation where you feel like something is not right or you don't get to the bottom of it, just ask the person to put a name on what they feel. It's true in your professional life. It's so true in your personal life as well, where you just say, well, I feel anger right now, and it's way better than saying, you're so annoying because blah, blah, blah. It's like, just I feel
like we're not used to doing that at work. So it's like, you have to figure out how to get those barriers down.
Yeah, and work, in the modern business culture, we're not used to bring our whole emotional selves, right? Like, it's like there's a whole range of emotions that's inappropriate to show at work, right? Anger being one of them. If you're frustrated and you act in frustration, or you feel frustrated, you're oftentimes like, oh, I shouldn't be frustrated at work, and then you like try to suppress it, but it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Like, emotions are part of the human experience. And so really being able to build an environment where you can acknowledge them and address them, right? If I feel frustrated, being able to say, I'm frustrated and I want to find a solution to that, instead of just like screaming silently inside in rage or outside to like people around me, that can be much more productive, actually. And I think in order to create an environment where people do that, you have to model it as a leader, right? You have to be able to say, hey, you have to calmly, like, this is my emotional experience, and here's why it's not threatening to you. It's like, I might be frustrated, but it's not about you, and like, how can we find a solution to this?
So last question, you talked a lot about your co-founder having cancer and having to cope with that and learning how to cope with that. And so, startups, as we all know, take up so much emotional energy and so much, energy in general. And so, but life keeps happening. There's births, deaths, and you just had a baby recently.
Yeah.
And so, do you have any thoughts on like transitioning? You're a founder and a dad now. Any tips for people in the audience who are parents or soon to be parents?
I don't know. I think what's helped me deal, like I've been dealing with, this startup in a much probably different way than I have in other startups. It's been, there's been a lot of ups and downs. I had a kid 5 months ago, and then a month later I broke both arms, and so we've had a lot of changes at work, and so the thing that's helped me the most is just really being with my emotional experience, and I think meditation really helped me kind of create a practice that would like let me be present in my experience, whatever it was, without needing things to be different. So that was a big one for me.
Yeah, maybe the last thing I would say is, when these things happen to you, the one thing that you remember is, and most of the people here are, working in startups, creating startups, and you just feel like, your life is your company because you care so much, and it's a good feeling. But at the end of the day, like, it's just a job, and it doesn't mean you don't care. Like, it's just a job doesn't mean like, it's a 9 to 5, and I don't care, and I go back home, and it just means like, it's just a job, and like you can think about the worst case scenario if your company fails or if you're unsuccessful at your job, and you'll see it's not that big of a deal. So once you have been able to process this, then I think you'll have a way healthier relationship to your job. And the one thing I tell every employee when things are hard is, at the end of the day, we're very lucky because we have a great opportunity. We're creating something no one has created before. And if for every challenge you see, you're thinking, well, it's just yet another challenge to solve, problem to solve, and I get the opportunity to find a solution. That's a hard solution. If it was obvious, someone would have found it and implemented it. I think then you're way more constructive in how you approach work.
That's awesome. So I think we're out of time. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.